episode number, no idea. I'm having a guest. We're getting ahead of schedule. I had to catch this guy because he's an enigma. He's flying himself around. He likes to stay in the undergrowth in crazy countries in South America. Today, everyone, I am talking to Jonathan Goodman. Jonathan, hello.
Hello, dude. Thanks for working with my schedule.
Mate, you're welcome. Just to warn everyone, there might be some background noise. I don't know, a few gunshots, maybe some people screaming, maybe just an old lady making a cup of coffee. But you're in quite a public place, aren't you? So we might get a bit of background verbal.
I am, and it's actually funny you mention it. About nights ago, I was actually by 5 gunshots about 100 meters from my bedroom. That was fun.
but that filled you with confidence on your travels. Yeah, I once stayed in a hotel in Belize off the coast of Mexico, beautiful little island. We arrived in the city, and the first night we were there, the guest house 3 doors down had a murder in it. And guess what? We left the next day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Uruguay's kind of known about as safe as you can get, really, in the world. And so that's one of the reasons why it kind of shocked us so much when we heard those gunshots. Nobody knew what to do. It's the funniest thing.
Perhaps some people were just drunk and they were doing the whole, shooting some cans out the back off the barbecue or something when they were pissed.
Maybe. I mean, we're beside a national park here. Maybe people were hunting. Who knows? But it was uncomfortable for me, to say the least.
So, John, I need to give you a chance to tell people who you are. I think a good percentage of the personal trainers that are listening to the show will have some idea of who you are and your work in some capacity. For people that don't know who John is, John, set the stage. Who on earth are you, man?
Absolutely. I was a personal trainer for about 9 years in Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. And then I sat down and decided to write a book because I thought at the time it was going to be easy. It absolutely wasn't. Years later, my first book came out for personal trainers called Ignite the Fire. And from that, I built a website called the Personal Trainer Development Center, which is now turned into a collaborative blog for personal trainers. And somehow it's become pretty popular. And it's just an collaborative place where trainers can get better, and it's almost 100, so it's pretty cool.
That was like the quickest intro I've ever had. I was then putting my feet up in an armchair and making a cup of tea. I thought I don't have to do anything for the next 10 minutes.
I try to be succinct as possible.
Yeah, you just don't have a big enough ego to talk about yourself for 10 minutes, which I happily do. So you were a coach, you were a PT. I'm always intrigued in the journey that got people into fitness. What got you into fitness and got you to become a personal trainer?
Sure. It's kind of a funny story. So I'm from Canada. We play hockey. I don't know. There's not that much of that where you are, I guess. But we play hockey, and I was always a small kid. So I weighed 105 pounds when I went to university at 17 years. But I been concussed a couple times. I played hockey because just kids went through puberty quicker than I did. Kids were bigger than I was, and they just started hammering me, and I didn't want to get injured anymore, so I decided to lift weights to stop that. And very quickly I stopped caring about hockey and started caring more about lifting weights. That was when I was about 15, 16 years old, and like any 15, 16-year-old in the gym, I kind of needed to figure out my way and gain comfort in the iron, as it were. And from there, when I went to university, I got 2 free personal training sessions at university and immediately thought that I wanted to become a trainer. So really, about a month after my 18th birthday, I became a personal trainer.
Wow.
And I worked at the university gym for 30 years, studying kinesiology there.
Wow, so you literally had a PT session and it was like, I'm going to be a PT.
Yeah, I was in first year university studying kinesiology or exercise science, and I immediately thought, I can do this. This seems like fun. And we couldn't get certified till we were 18 in Canada. I think it's the same in the UK. And so on my 18th birthday, I started looking into certifications, and within a month I was certified.
Wow. Now, 9 years, that interests me actually, because especially in the UK, there's a lot of crazy statistics that are thrown about personal trainers and how long they actually stay in the industry. it's quite scary. About 2 years is batted around a lot as like the common figure. Now, you were a PT for 9 years, and then you diversified, which we'll talk about later. What kept you in the game? What kept you inspired by what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Ben. And actually, the stats in Canada are much worse than that in the UK, whereby most people stay in their career years. So, in terms of my story, I mean, I finished university. I already had 3 years of experience, so I was able to land a pretty good job in Toronto training, where I was making a good hourly rate, and it was at a good club with good mentors and stuff like that. And then, I mean, the truth of the matter is, my clients kept me in it. They were just great people, and they probably taught me more than I could ever learn from school or from another job anyway in all different industries. And I just kind of rolled with it, to be honest.
I think that's a great point. We fall out of love with our business or what we're doing sometimes if we don't surround ourselves by the right people. But we've talked about business as a coach, as a self-employed individual on numerous occasions on this podcast. And one of the reasons I fell out of love with personal training is that I wasn't coaching people I enjoyed coaching. And when I reflect on it now, it's purely the positioning that I gave myself as a coach, the people that I allowed to come to me via the energy and the marketing and the materials that I put out there. So really, I only had myself to blame. But it sounds like you got your positioning really right, and the people that you worked with inspired you to keep going.
So interesting. You had the ability to look back and identify that. I mean, looking back, yes, I did position myself really well. I wish I could say that it was a master plan and I knew what I was doing all along. I mean, I really just fell into it. But really, my greatest mentors, still some of my best friends, were my... And I mean, we're talking the Associate Dean of Medicine at one of the largest universities in Toronto, the head of psychiatry at one of the major hospitals in Toronto. And I mean, the head of psychiatry is the first example to me one day, just straight in the face, and he says, "You're going to do more than personal training." He handed me a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And within 2 years, I was on the path that I'm on now. And it was him that did it, right? And it's just crazy. I mean, the people that enter your life exactly when you need them. And I think clients, example.
Nice. Yeah, I've read that book too. I read it quite a while ago. It's a great book. Really good book.
Oh, yeah.
So you've been on quite a journey through various aspects of like health and fitness, the industry, from being a PT to being someone who helps PTs find resources, helping them marketing, mindset, that kind of thing. So talk to me about the evolution. You stopped being a PT and you kind of realised that maybe your passion not was really elsewhere, but maybe had just evolved?
I think that's a perfect way to say it. I think you hit the nail on the head, Ben, that the passion evolved. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I just kind of followed my intuition at every step of the way and stopped lying to myself. I took time and just wrote down what it was that I wanted to do and what it was I wanted to achieve. And that helped me kind of pave the way. When it comes down to kind of the path that I followed in terms of working with other trainers, I mean, it was as simple as me identifying, okay, well, I know some stuff, but there's a lot of amazing there. Why don't I build something that ideally helps all of them get their work opposed to just me?
Nice. Well, you've talked about fear quite a lot in the past, and I personally think fear is something that holds people back on all sorts of levels, not just in the fitness world, any industry, any capacity. Fear is a big thing in people's lives. What fears do you have in your work and where your work is taking you, and how do you battle to overcome them?
Yeah, it's funny, fear has kind of shifted with me. Now, the biggest thing that I fear is that my work isn't going to be taken the way that I want it to be taken. I'm fortunate in that I have the opportunity to kind of work on stuff that I feel is going to have the biggest impact and not be too concerned about the financial, let's sensation of the work itself. So what I fear now is whether people don't understand me. I think in this day and age, for anybody who produces information, there's going to be people who disagree. And if somebody disagrees with me, then that's not really an issue. I have my opinions, and I understand other people have theirs. But for me, it's the fear that I haven't communicated my point effectively enough. And to try to offshoot that, I've kind of dove deep into understanding logic and understanding arguments and debates. And so as long as I make my argument, I think, valid and understood, then it kind of dissuades a little bit of the fear.
I like that because I totally agree about the communication element because, I'm a communicator of many sorts. This podcast is a means of me to communicate my thoughts and ideas and perspectives to other people to try and help. And a lot of the time I've learned this largely through Facebook. Facebook is a medium that I like to communicate on a lot. And when you communicate stuff and you start to get people, we'll call it angry, rub people up the wrong way, etc. I find it's not often that they just out and out disagree with you. It's that you're right in that you haven't quite made your point quite correctly. Because if I give my opinion, it's fine for someone to disagree with me. I almost encourage people to have their thoughts and express their opinion. But if I haven't translated that properly, then because there's lines that haven't been crossed, then people almost get angry because they almost don't understand, and it's
exactly
purely because I haven't laid that educational foundation about the opinion enough. And I think I don't really know, to be honest, where I'm going with this, but I just think it's a brilliant point and something that I've learned. And I think anyone, whether you're a PT, you're in a job, you're trying to communicate to people, the way that you do it and the context that you use and the language and the phrasing is just so powerful and so important.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, your network's quite large, right, Ben? So there's a responsibility there to do your network a service and add value to your network and communicate a set of ideas, but also encourage them to think for themselves. I think a large part damaging aspects of the fitness industry are people who pigeonhole themselves into one sort of ideal, and as a result then kind of stop any of their followers from listening to anything else. That's another conversation altogether. But what it comes down to is there's a responsibility, and from what we see as people who produce information to what we don't see of people consuming that information, that's where my fear comes in. Like, people who maybe aren't messaging me back, are they taking my information the way that I intend them to and questioning it the way that I intend them to, the way that I want them to? Or are they thinking something different than what I intended? And that's where my biggest fear comes in, to be completely honest.
Because I will communicate with people as much as I can on Facebook, and if someone disagrees with my opinion, I'll tend to not get involved because they have an opinion and I have an opinion, and I'm not really going to sway that. I've already laid down the educational element or argument of my opinion. But if someone misinterprets it, then I'll get involved and I'll comment back and say, "Oh no, sorry, X, Y, and Z," because I have, like you say, I have a responsibility to re-communicate what my message was so they understand it properly.
Right, and I mean I think what you just said is the perfect way to do it. I don't have anything to add. If somebody disagrees, fine, they disagree. That's perfectly valid, and I think that that's needed. But if somebody doesn't understand, then that's when it's important to come in and clarify it.
Okay, so staying on the topic of fear, once people find a way around their fears, do you find that they can build progression quite quickly? As essentially a lot of the time fear is holding people back. If we conquer those, do you find people are almost quite limitless in what they can achieve?
I think what's important first and foremost is that whoever is having that fear needs to figure out what the source of that fear is. For example, with me, as I was writing my books, as I was building up a couple courses and things, I became paralyzed and as a result paralyzed in actually putting it out, right, and taking that step to put it out. I produced the whole thing, I tested, I'd have beta groups go through it, whatever. But then when it came time to actually make it live, I became paralyzed. And so what I did, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm happy to speak about what I did to overcome that, is I would set everything to go so that I needed to press one button, the enter key, click a mouse, whatever it was. And that would start a cascade of events. That would start an email chain. That would start a bunch of emails. That would put websites live, whatever it was. But as long as I built out a system, so there was one button for me to push one time and there was no coming back from it once I pushed that button, I was able to put these things out, because then there might be 99 times where I wasn't going to push the button because I was so scared of what was going to happen. But that one time where I would just say, fuck it, that one kind of slip in my mind where it just said, fuck it, and I pressed the button and then it was done. Right? And then I realized that it wasn't such a big deal and could move forward. So that's how I dealt with, as I was kind of building stuff out. I actually named that and called it the fuck it button back in the day. I might rename at some point in the future if I ever decide to write about it professionally, but it's that idea of where does the fear stem from? Fear of putting myself out there publicly. And so my solution to that was, well, I'm always going to be scared of putting myself out there publicly, but if I create a way to just press one button and have everything go, and then, 1 in 100 times I'm going to click that button, and then there's no turning back.
Yeah, interesting. So talking of progression, because as a result of blocking down fears, people can progress. This is something I've seen you mention before about delayed gratification. What do you mean by this? Because it sounds like quite an odd term. I'd like gratification right now, if I'm honest.
I can't see you. We talk about that gratification. When speaking about delayed gratification, the initial sort of the seminal study of it is something called the marshmallow test, and it goes back to the 1940s and 1950s. But essentially what happened was researchers took a bunch of kids, like 5 years old, put a marshmallow in front of them and said, "Hey, you can have this marshmallow now, but I got to go, and I'll be back in 15 minutes. If I come back and the marshmallow is still there, meaning you haven't eaten it, I'm going to give you a second marshmallow. But if you eat the marshmallow, you don't get anything else." And a couple of things to note here is that, like, marshmallows to little kids are like crack. I mean, the videos of these kids reacting to trying not to eat the marshmallow is hilarious. They're like running around the room, like banging their head against the wall. But what was most fascinating is that the researchers then followed these kids for the next 20 years. And the kids that were able to get gratification of eating that marshmallow for the known gain in the future of having a second marshmallow were actually ranked better in every single notable quality of life, from financial to relationship to professional. And what it comes down to is pretty much anything worth having is probably going to be pretty difficult along the path to get it. You talk about a six-pack, you talk about writing a book, they're very much the same. A six-pack takes, the steps to get a six-pack are reasonably well laid out. Like, they're not that complicated. The same with writing a book. You sit down and write a page a day. If your book's pages, it's 200 days, right? But what's similar in both of these cases is that there's this end goal that is really far away, that's awesome, and that the steps to achieve this end goal are really painful along the way. And one's ability to delay gratification will help them end goal. But most people can't delay gratification. I can't really do it that well. So what I do is I break up all of the steps into as small pieces as I possibly can, and then build in immediate rewards into each step. And I'm happy to give you a couple examples of that if you like.
Yeah, please do give an example. Hell yeah.
Well, so when it comes to writing a book, for example, my latest book, my rule with writing books is they're as short as possible, as long as necessary. And so what I did is I wrote out all of the cover, and I wrote, there ended up being 87 for random reason, and I wrote each subject on a cue card. Each cue card is no more than 300 to 600 words, so it's a very small chunk, right? And I put the entire stack of cue cards on the right side of my computer with all my notes on the cue cards and research and stuff like that. When I sit down to write, because writing for me is relatively, sitting down to write is really painful. And so sitting to write, knowing that I'm going to try to bang out a 3,000-word chapter, means that I'll never sit down to write. Sitting down to write, knowing that I have a 100-word section, where I can do that, and then once I'm in it, keep going. So I'd pick up one cue card, I'd write that section, and then I'd take that same cue card and I'd put it face down on the left side of my computer. And the reward of putting it face down on the left side of my computer was enough to keep me going through that entire stack. And then there's even some gamification techniques there, right? You see like a status bar filling up. Well, I saw the pile on my right getting smaller and the pile on my left getting bigger. And so there was immediate rewards throughout the entire process that built towards that end goal of the book being done.
Now, this is a really, really cool point, really, because you think how we can relate this and how we generally talk about this kind of stuff all the time in health, in business. You know, you look at getting a good physique. You need to take time. You need to be patient. You need to delay gratification in, maybe from foods. You know, people have like trigger foods, for example. If you go into having that food, then you're going to signal a chain of events that are possibly going to be negative. Now, if you delay that gratification, there's going to be a greater reward. You know, we talk about business, about playing the long game, about building yourself up. The same with being entrepreneurial in your job, about taking time, building up your contacts, about showing your boss that you're really good to get yourself a promotion. You know, what we're now showing is that there's some scientific credibility to show that if people play the long game, they're essentially more successful in the long run.
For sure. And I mean, I think what it comes down to, when you look at like the interplay between the different industries, is that any one industry is inherently uninteresting, right? Like fitness to me is not really that interesting. Neither is psychology, neither is internet business. But when you start meshing two or more of those things together, it becomes fascinating. And to me, that's all that, I mean, fitness, well, steps to get a six-pack are, like I said, they're pretty laid out. They're pretty simple. They're not easy to do, but the steps are pretty simple. The same with building a business. I mean, there's no secrets, really. It's have a good idea, and it's see it through, and it's plan and build good systems. But once you start taking psychology and meshing it with fitness, that's when it becomes fascinating, and that's when you get that kind of secret sauce. And I think this is a perfect example of that.
Nice. I think the fitness industry is going to see a bit more of an evolution when it comes to this kind of meshing of concepts. You know, we talk about body composition all the time in the fitness industry. I think people are now going to be talking a lot more about mindset, you know, the way people think, their blocking factors. Because at the moment, I don't think personal trainers, I know they're aware of all this stuff, but I think it's one of the areas that they struggle with. Because you have to read personalities, human interaction, character traits. It's not as simple as giving someone a diet plan, which is nuts and bolts. There's now kind of emotions in play, and I think that's kind of the next evolution of fitness, I think, in the fitness industry.
I think, too, it's a necessary evolution. I mean, a fitness professional is probably somebody who is reasonably self-motivated, because they've been able to achieve a pretty good measure of fitness themselves. But they're also somebody who's been they've been exercising for so long that it's sometimes hard, because of how into something we are, to think back at mindset was when you started. Like when I think back to my feelings when I was 15 years old in the gym, looking over at the weight stack that started at 20 pounds, one day I'll get there. I mean, that to me is so important for a fitness professional to think, okay, well, is that the mindset are coming into it, that are like petrified of the gym and you know, unconfident themselves and all that kind of stuff. And for a fitness professional to be able to identify what stage they're at, what help that they need, I think more and more fitness professionals will realize that they don't need the tactics, they don't need the nutrition plans as much. They need to understand those motivating factors a lot more. Nice.
We've got a coach who's part of our team at Body Type Nutrition called Heather Wynn, and this is kind of her specialty area. She's now becoming a lot more specialised in mindset, overcoming fear, all that kind of stuff, and I definitely think, and I hope she's one to watch in the future as she pushes her work out there. I mean, anyone listening to this that wants to read more about this kind of stuff, check out her blog, because her blog it's got some mind-blowing blogs on it. It's so good.
Cool. I gotta have a look at that afterwards as well.
Right, I'm going to make a segue into a little side topic. When we were communicating via email, you mentioned the fact that you've been injured previously and you injured your back, and it's the exact same way I injured my back, and I know loads of other trainers have injured their back deadlifting. The annoying thing was, I just aggravated it a little bit deadlifting, and then I did it properly, just shifting my weight in my seat, doing some work. Next minute I knew I was on my back, spasming, just couldn't move and had to get up with the help of two people. I hear that you injured your back deadlifting trying to impress a girl.
Yeah, she was really beautiful. I mean, it's stupid shit, right? Because for some reason, a girl in the gym is going to be more impressed that I can deadlift 225 pounds versus 215 pounds. Like, it's the stupidest thing in the world. There was actually, I wish I could find it. There's actually, I think it was a Norwegian study that they took people in the gym and they looked at the weights that they were lifting, and then they inserted a beautiful woman, and the weights went up something like an average of 60%. Like, it was some hilarious, I'm sure I'm bastardizing the study, but it was some hilarious thing where, I mean, there's actually empirical evidence that men are so stupid that they will lift more weight than they were previously lifting because they think that a woman won't notice.
The thing is, it makes sense. Come on. It does. You have to look at it. Now, I mean, that led you into being a lot more interested in lower back pain and how the lower back functions. Is that content you've played around with? Is that content people can go and have a look at your work as almost like a bit of a specialty of yours?
Not that I've written that much about it. I just think that people do it better than go and look at Stu McGill's work, for example, or Gray Cook. There's a host of people who I think do it better than me. That was something that I studied a ton, both to fix my own back, but also I realized just how debilitating it is, chronic back pain. And so I wanted to help other people with it. So I became an expert with my clients at helping them with it. But no, I can't say I've written much about it that I've published.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I want to make a little segue. You mentioned your books earlier, and I have two of your books right here that you kindly sent me. I have the other book that you wrote, Race to the Top, on ebook. I read that quite some time ago. Very good book, by the way, Jonathan. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really enjoyed that one. Now, you help a lot of personal trainers, and obviously one of the books that you've written here that I've got, the Personal Trainer Pocket Handbook. This is obviously to help PTs kind of build their business, their income, enjoy their work, etc. What was the initial impetus to write this book? Because do you know what? You've written this book in my favourite way, in the fact that I can pick up this book, I can read a chapter before I'm going to bed in about 5 to 10 minutes. All the chapters are like, about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. I'm falling asleep by the end of it, but it's almost something that I can read, digest for 5 minutes, and it's my subconscious is thinking about it as I go to sleep because it's a nice juicy bit of info. So I've kind of waffled that question. A, great, I love the way you've written the book, but B, what was the impetus? Why?
That book, so the Personal Trainer Pocket book, features answers to the 48 most common questions people asked throughout his day, throughout his or her career. And the impetus to write that was actually out of necessity. I started getting a lot of from trainers asking me questions about, how do I deal with X objection? Or my client hasn't, canceled a session and I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks. What, like questions like that are much more nuanced, that maybe aren't answered that much anymore. And I didn't have enough time to answer every single email. So what I did is got a question in that I hadn't seen before. I wrote as good of a detailed templated answer as I possibly could, and then I individualized it to that person, the answer in a master document. What I found after about 2 years is that I had this master document that was really answers to every single question a trainer might ask. And because when I didn't know the answer personally, I would reach out to somebody in the field who I knew who was an expert on that subject and got them to give their input. And when I was putting together Ignite version 2, which is the other book that came out, my editor actually saw that I had this FAQ because she referenced some of the material in helping to firm up the content of Ignite. And she just looked at it and she goes, "Oh, we got to turn this into a book." And so that's really what happened. I had no plans in turning a book. It was really just my giant FAQ to help me answer emails more thoroughly than I had, and it was possible for me to do any other way.
Nice. Well, I think it's a great book, and I think anything that a personal trainer can do to look at how they interact with their clients, how they schedule things, all the stuff outside of writing a diet plan, teaching them how to squat, I think is amazing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that book came after you've written Ignite the Fire?
Yeah, so that book is actually not out now. I don't know when we're going to post this this interview, but the pocketbook is going to be coming out in physical copy and in Kindle about a month after Ignite the Fire version 2.
Okay, got you.
So you've got the physical, but you've got an early copy before it actually is out to the public.
Oh, well, but by the time this podcast goes live, it will be live for sale.
Awesome. Okay.
So I suppose again, what the Ignite the Fire is the second time you've rewritten it. Why have you rewritten it? What was the impetus to write it the first time around?
The impetus to write it the first time around was just because I was hiring trainers at the time, and I was just flat out looking for resources like it that existed. I figured out pretty quickly when I was working with other trainers and mentoring them that the exercises didn't really matter as much as one's ability to get a client to want to do the exercise. And I started looking for resources for trainers on that and for all of the soft sides of training, high integrity, lead generation, client retention thing. And there just wasn't anything that I thought was all that good out there. So I sat down and decided to write a book, not really knowing what went into a book because, I think if I knew what went into writing a book at that time, I probably never would have done it. I had a very nice and numbing state of ignorance at the time. But the book, I'm ecstatic, of course I did. The book came out, it did well, and people liked it, and mentorships and stuff picked it up. The second one, though, the reason that I revised it was a couple. One is I've just learned a lot in the last couple of years. Particularly, I've learned a lot more because I've just toured around the world and had the fortunate opportunity to meet with really business owners from all around the world and seeing what they did. And so up that there's a lot more information on lead generation. There's a lot more information on using new media with high integrity. And the other reason is that the fitness industry landscape has changed considerably since I wrote the first. Things like CrossFit, for example, have come and kind of come into place. In addition, one-on-one training has kind of taken a back seat to small group training. And so I wanted to reflect that.
Nice. Yeah, you've pulled in quite a few experts in this book. You've kind of got sections throughout the book. I think I've just seen Nick Mitchell's name in here, various other people. Again, was that for you to kind of say, well, do you know what? I'm not the top guy in this area, but I really like this guy and I want you to hear of him. Yeah, I think for two reasons I did. Well, for three reasons I did that. One is just marketing. I mean, I'll be completely honest. The more people that I have involved in the book, the more invested in the book and are probably going to help me promote it. Sure.
And so that is, part of it absolutely was a marketing initiative. But in terms of who I chose, it came down to people who I thought really had something to add to the conversation as a whole. I think part of the issue with the fitness industry is that there are a lot of good people out there that are doing great work that don't really have the time or the desire to really market themselves, and as a result, their word isn't getting out. And so this was a way to help them get their word out. Is that, like you said, I don't know everything, man. I don't even know that much. I have maybe 2-3 good ideas a year. But if I can pull in 20 or 30 other people with great ideas, then we've got a book that can cover all of the bases, as opposed to me trying to superficially cover a topic because of some stuff that I read about it I can pull in somebody who lives and breathes that one topic, who is the absolute expert on it, and have them give their opinion. And I just think it makes for a better, fuller, more thorough work. Nice.
Well, when you do the third revised revision...
When I do the third... Man, that is... We can talk for another hour about what went into doing the second one. The third happening anytime soon. I'll just hear your work, man. I'm happy. Your work is awesome, but not even thinking about a third
one. I'm currently writing 2 books that are planned to come out in 2015. Well, they will come out in 2015 because I need to put my ass on the line. But
right.
It is a mammoth task. You kind of get into it, and then I'll backtrack a little bit. I started writing a book about 4.5 years ago, and the book was really research based. It kind of took all the topics that we constantly argue about in the fitness industry and go, actually, this is the science. Like, we talked about coffee and saturated fats and all sorts of things. It was like a myth debunking book, and I got halfway through it. And I wrote all this stuff, and I was like, well, there's been a new bit of research added, and it didn't change the game, but I had to have that research in there. And I'd spent about 3 months writing this book, and in the end I put the book down. I was just like, I can't do this. I'm constantly having to go back, and I can't imagine how university, more kind of textbook people feel when they write their life's work, pulling in all the science, and then by the time they've written it, there's been another 2 years worth of good research that's come out. It must be heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, the nature of a physical is always going to be at least 1 year out of date. That's a lot of the benefits of digital books, and I think with the work that you're putting together, I mean, doing something in digital format whereby if there's any changes or updates, you send all the buyers the updates. I think that's the only way to really do it and do it justice. Or you can put out a book where really from every step of the game, you make it so it stands the test of time. I mean, to give you an example, there's a researcher at the Wharton School of Business. His name is Jonah Berger, and he studies contagion theory. He had a book called Contagious. It was #1 New York Times bestseller. And him and I actually were a partner on a project for my other company, Vionomics. And we had shot all the video. We were going to talk about how to use Facebook, how to use Twitter and stuff like that, using his theoretical research. And then a lot of the stuff that I've done has been more actionable theoretical research, and we were going to combine the two, and we'd shot all the video. By the time the video was shot, Facebook changed a couple of its rules and guidelines. We had to trust. And it's just impossible to do stuff like that and keep. And so I think for any publishing anything, like if you're going to try to publish something that's up to date, it's almost got to be in digital, and you've got to a way to allow the consumer to get updates continually, or you've got to write strategically so that it stands the test of time, so that you're not making arguments based on current research because you know that current research change.
Yeah, I think the books, like you say, I hope they're going to be books that are going to stand the test of time, and I can produce them in hardback cover. And part of that is me personally, I love to have a book come through the post. I like to feel it. I like to sit down. I like to read it. I like to drink a cup of tea while I'm reading it. I like to engage in it. And I've got tons and tons of digital books, and most of them are half read because I hate that like almost non-engagement of not having that book there with me. And I also find it very satisfying to look at my bookcase and go, yeah, I've read all those books. Like, that knowledge is in my head.
Well, and as an information writer, I mean, from your standpoint, there's so many benefits to selling somebody a physical book versus a digital book, even though the initial cost to you might be more. I mean, physical books get cherished, like you said, displayed proudly on shelf. They get shown off. They get passed around. I mean, they do so much work for the information creator passively that can never be measured, that a digital book will never do. And I think the idea that a lot of fitness professionals are going into creating digital materials, I think is a very superficial way of thinking, actually a pretty inherently wrong way of thinking. for the most part, just because there are so many things that aren't measured that go along with creating physical materials, whereby you just can never recreate that with digital.
Mm. Well, Jonathan, I've really enjoyed the chat today. We've battled through it despite some kind of background noise and some internet connectivity, but we got there. We did the show, and I really appreciate the advice that you've kind of shared with us today. I'd really like people to be able to kind of, if they want to, go and find your work, invest some time in reading some of your materials. Where do you want to send people from here? You've got the book, the Personal Trainer Development Pocket Book that's out. You've got your Virolomics. Where are people going?
Sure. I mean, if somebody's in either of the books, I mean, they're both on Amazon. There's Ignite the Fire and there's the Personal Trainer Pocketbook. If somebody's a fitness professional, the Personal Trainer Development Center is definitely the way to be. I mean, you can subscribe to it. You can like it on Facebook, all that good stuff. If you're more interested in sort of on business and life and all that kind of stuff, I do maintain a personal blog at Vironomics where I talk about, well, really it's kind of off-the-cuff thoughts and ideas that I just like to put down on paper because it helps me remember them.
Nice. How do you pronounce that? Virolomics.
Vironomics. So exactly how it sounds. VIRAL nomics. NOMICS.
Nice. And are you on sort of Twitter, Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on all of them. Twitter at Jon, JON_PTDC. Facebook, you can find me, Personal Trainer Developments. Find me under Jonathan Goodman. Yeah, both those work.
Nice. Well, Jon, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been great. PTs, people, go and find Jon's information. It's been pretty invaluable. I've read a lot of his stuff over the years. I haven't done recently, but in past years I kept abreast of the Virolomics material, and it's fantastic. It's really good, and you know when you, despite the fact that you're just kind of putting down your thoughts, it doesn't really matter. You're an interesting person. It's like this podcast didn't 100% fit the bill of what we normally talk about, but hopefully it's been interesting for people, and I think as long as you stimulate people's curiosity, you're adding value, and that's of benefit to a lot of people.
I certainly hope so, man, and I appreciate you giving a forum to people like me to be able to try and spread value. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Right, people, if you've enjoyed the show, please do me a massive honour and telling other people. Tag me and Jon in on Facebook or Twitter. Tell us if you liked the show or not. Tell us if you thought it was rubbish. We want to get your feedback. If you enjoyed it enough to write us a review, please head on over to iTunes or Stitcher for you Android listeners and write us a review. And when you see it on Facebook and Twitter, give it a like, give it a retweet. Help us spread that message. I will be back on next week with Rachel doing our usual Q&A show, and then the podcast after that, well, who knows. Right, that's goodbye from me. Jonathan.
Thank you, Ben.
And we will speak to you next time. Hey everyone, Ben Cooper Radio, episode number 127. That's it, that's the one. I hope you all enjoyed. Mike Marler was on last week's show. We're doing really well with guests at the moment. I've got loads signed up.